Hello everyone and welcome to the O'Halloran family farm. I'm here in Keena and County Longford, and this is the second of our virtual open days, so this one's a little bit different. As you're probably aware, those of you who've been following us for the last 8 years, the majority of our clients will be spring calving grass-based systems, but we do have maybe 15-20% of our clients who are more of a higher output, higher input system, and some fully housed. And I had a meeting with Derek O'Halloran back in May of last year, and Derek had a fragmented farm. He was farming in a number of areas all his life, and he was keen to get into milk production, keen to have a dairy, but a spring calving grass-based system was not an option that he could consider due to farm fragmentation. So he was very keen to see would it stack up for him as a business to have to build a new shed like you see here, buy cows, and then go with a system that was going to require a lot of feed and a lot of management. So he was keen to see that it makes sense on paper before he went too far down the road. So what we did, we recommended some people for Derek to talk to. We got our yard designer Simon Moore to meet up with him to look at options on sheds, because it's a different plan when you're an indoor system, different considerations around cow comfort, feeding space, labour efficiency. So over the course of a month or two, we helped Derek put together a business plan. He put it through to his bank. Thankfully, it all made sense. And now you see he's a facility up and running. So over the course of the next 30-40 minutes, you learn a lot more about why the O'Halloran family got into dairy production and what's their first year been like. We're going to have all our main speakers available at the very end, and you'll be able to put your questions to them individually. So there's a chat facility at the bottom of your screen. You can text the questions, and at the end of the presentations then we'll get through as many questions as we can.
Okay, so my name is Jordan Malloy and I work as Farm Management Support Advisor in Lely Center Mullingar, and today we're here on the farm of Derek O'Halloran, and Derek's going to take us a bit through what kind of system he's running at the moment. So Derek, why did you get into dairying and why are you running the system you're running at the moment?
Well, the reason we got into dairying was the beef, sheep and sucklers was financially wasn't given back enough for the amount of labour we were putting in. We're already busy with free range poultry as well, free range eggs. We're busy there, so we're trying to find something that would fit. We looked at dairy. We reckoned it was going to be the best option. Grazing didn't suit us because our land is broke up into two smaller sections. The poultry there's 48 acres gone to poultry that we can't graze cows on. We can cut silage off it all right. So between one thing and another, that is the reason. So we went for a high yielding cow then, and it suits best for the indoor system. So it'll be high output, high input.
And startup wise, how did that go for you, or how did you find it?
It actually went, as I said already, it went better than expected. We had the first cows came here, they were being milked on a herringbone parlour because we weren't ready, so the lad that bought the heifers off of, he calved down some of them for us and milked them till we were ready. So they came from a herringbone system, mainly heifers. There was 3 or 4 cows in it, second calvers, but within I'd say 5 days, everything was attending themselves, and it was going quite well now. So it was easier than I thought it was going to be. On the 6th of January we started, I think, milking 19. We calved throughout the summer to be at, we'll say, 48 today. We intend to be, by the end of January, about 55 cows.
Okay, so your plan is you're drying off cows every month, but you're also calving cows every month, so you're completely all year round.
Yes.
So what's your target then? To just be drying off X amount of cows every month and then calving?
Exactly. The target being that we'll keep the robot hopefully as close to 2,000 litres as is possible. As we get more of the young stock that's out of these cows coming into the system, we'll be able to do that easier, but the target is to be drying and calving all the time.
So you're working a fully indoor system, and a fully TMR system. So what exactly are the cows getting at the moment?
At the moment they get 3 kilos of meal mixed with the silage, molasses and straw. in the diet feeder. They also get a few minerals and that put into that as well. The rest of the feed all goes through the robot, through the auger coming straight from the bin.
Okay. So your grass silage then, where is that cut then from, and is that all reseeded block?
That's all, yeah. We reseed every year. It's something we've done anyway. We always reseed it. So our reseeds will be no older at the moment than three to 4 years. Generally on the 5th year we go back and reseed again. We just stitch it in. Would be grazed off a mixture of the poultry, or the silage is made of a mixture of the poultry ground and then rented silage land.
Okay. And when you're cutting it then, how many cuts are you doing a year?
Everywhere gets 3 cuts, and part of it gets 4 cuts, depending on how the young stock that's coming on grazing that's outside, depending how they're getting on. Some gets 4 cuts.
Okay, yeah. So obviously you're going for high quality silage. Yes. And I presume you're getting it tested then?
Yes, it's tested before we start to use it to make sure that there's, like we say, if your silage was poorer quality, you'd have to up the TMI diet going into them. So it's essential that you get as good as is possible.
And say at the moment now, the grass silage you're getting, what kind of DMD is that sitting at now? And
the first cut was tested at 78 DMD, 15% protein, so it's fairly good stuff.
You're happy enough?
I'm happy enough with that, yeah.
You weren't milking cows before, so I suppose were you a bit nervous about going down this route and the system?
Yes, well, we had a lot of learning to do, especially on a high yielding cow. They're not as straightforward as the lower yielding cows, so I suppose that's one of the reasons that we'll say the best collar that Lily's had to get the most information that was needed was a no-brainer for me. A simple thing like the weighing scales on the Lily, that's also another tool to help me decide if a cow is having problems, that I can decide what's wrong. Or
so you have the heat and rumination tags. So I suppose, do you use the rumination side of it much, or what do you be looking at?
Every morning on the rumination side, it's one of the first things I click into, because if a cow is going to have a problem, you'll see where the rumination will ease off. Now, it could be a simple thing, she's in heat and then that's no problem, but if there was a problem, then you go look at the cow, decide what's wrong and treat the cow if needed.
So I think Niall was out here back in May 2019 for his first visit. So I suppose from May onwards then, what did you do? Did you go look at farms, and how did you actually get to the building stage then?
Yeah, I looked at most of the farms in the north. It was all indoors. I went to look at all new builds, just to get ideas on what way the shed was going to be laid out. I looked at their systems. Within, I think, July, we started work here. We had the plan and got at that stage. We started work here, and by November, the cows was in the upper end. The heifers was in the upper end of the shed. They would have been due to calve from January. So that we finished installing the robots and that, everything was finished before Christmas, but we started up on the 6th of January, on the first cows being milked.
You started milking here on the 6th of January then? Okay. And how many cows then were started up? I suppose, I know you weren't calving them all straight away, but how many started up then roughly?
The first day was 19, okay, with 19 for milking on the first day.
Okay. And how quickly then did you build up to numbers? Like, how many did you milk here at peak then this year?
48 actually is our peak at the moment. We dried off a few a couple of months ago. We were 48 a couple of months ago. We dried off a few and we've calved a few, so we've held the number. We'll be increasing to, by the end of January, 55 we'll be making with the amount of heifers that we have to calve at the moment.
Okay. And what is actually your plan then, cow numbers wise or production wise, going forward then?
Plan going forward is to keep that robot as close to 2,000 litres as is possible. So we would be drying cows every month, calving cows every month, all year round, which suits us better as well as regards to poultry, in that we won't have big calving blocks and be busy at any point of the year. You'll always have, every week you'll have a cow or two calving.
You'll keep the workload relatively the same then every month, okay, so. And production-wise per cow then, what at the moment are the cows doing yield-wise?
We're yielding average just over 32 litres at the moment. There's some cows or heifers in that's making over 400 days. They're still holding, some of them are still over 40 litres. We said the peak, when we started off first, we peaked at 36 litres average.
Okay, and you were happy obviously?
I'm happy with that. That was more, when we were doing our business plan in the beginning, we hadn't planned for that amount of milk at all. We're more than happy with that.
And going forward then, obviously there's a lot of heifers in the herd at the moment, so the yield will obviously increase. So, and I know you're trying to keep it at around the 2,000 litres per robot per day, or give or take. So will you be keeping the cow numbers at what, 50 cows per robot, or?
Again, that we'll say there could be parts of the month that there could be 55. If it takes 58 cows to do the 2,000 litres, well, so be it.
So did you have any reservations about the system you chose to run?
Initially, yes. When I started to look at the systems up in the north, lads that were indoor in several years, and I saw the amount of cow comfort that they achieved and how happy the cows were in the system, that was sort of helped me make my decision in that, yeah, no, there's no reason this won't work. If the cow is happy, she'll milk. These cows are, well, I think they're exceptionally happy. They do their own thing there every day. They have rubber out at the feeding area, so they stand on rubber when they're eating. They ruminate in the cubicles, either standing. They can stand fully in the cubicle, both, they're not half in and half out. So, as I say, the only time they're on concrete is when they're travelling from either the feeding area to be milked or the milking area back to the cubicles. Is the only time they're on concrete.
So I suppose you're after doing almost a full year now. What has been the biggest challenge in the last year that you found?
Getting the diet right on the cow and making sure that we're doing our job as best as we can. I work with using in Lely to achieve this, and we have a nutritionist as well. So that was probably the biggest challenge, just getting feeding right.
And do you have any other problems with them being indoors now? Is there any lameness or?
No, lameness hasn't been an issue. Every week you just press a button and the thing in the office there, and once a week they foot bath. So if there was a problem with a cow slightly lame, we'd probably run her through a second time. It's during the middle of the week, but it's usually the weekend we foot bath them, but very, very little problems. We draft through select them on the T4C, and then the gate flicks on the robot and runs them down through the foot bath.
Yeah, just on a particular day once a week.
Exactly. Don't have to think about it. All I have to do is change the foot dip. That's all. That's it.
Okay, so I'm here with Rebecca now, and Rebecca's very much involved in the farm on a daily basis. So Rebecca, you might just tell us what you do with the robot on a daily basis.
Yeah, so down here typically I would be up here around 7 o'clock in the morning. I spend about an hour here before I start work. So that just means if there's a collect cow up, it's fairly rare you'd milk her. We do the filter changes. Just general wash up. We like to wipe down all the lasers and everything that are on the robot and make sure everything is clean and tidy for the day. That's kind of what you spend the morning at, just checking the cows. Then there's the cubicles and everything, they're scraped down, they're sanitised, and that kind of would be a typical morning routine.
And roughly how long, I suppose, without cow calving or drying off cows or anything like that, just your typical, how long would it take you then in the morning just to do that?
Yeah, in the mornings I'd only spend about an hour here because I don't have as much time in the mornings because I'm going to work, but in the evenings you might spend maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours here, and that'd be doing your daily basic things, and you'd get a few extra things added in as well.
So I suppose over the last year you've had to go and learn about the computer, the robot. and startup in general. So how did you find it all?
Yeah, look, I have to say it all went better than I expected. Like, I had myself prepared for 3 weeks of rough pushing cows into robots and trying to figure out the whole system and everything. But I have to say, that's one thing I will give it, the technology and everything, and it's very easy to use. Like, it's a pretty basic computer system. You know, there's nothing difficult in it. In regards to like Dad, he doesn't have any trouble really using it now. It might take him a little longer to get used to it, but he wouldn't be using a computer daily. I would. And like anything that he doesn't know, he can ask, and generally I find it myself. Worst comes to worst, the 24-hour call service we have, that the have, brilliant. You know, they answer straight away. They'll answer most of your questions over the phone. They'll talk you through anything. It's rare enough you'd have to ring it though, to be honest. It is very, very easy to use.
Okay. And how do you actually find the robot itself then, in lines of training up a new cow, say?
Yeah, look, I'd say within 3-4 days, the majority of heifers would be attending themselves. The first couple of days, we'd just put them in the segregation area, so they intend to attend easier for coming from there rather than coming from the main herd. But yeah, no, I'd say within 3-4 days, max a week, they're back out here with the main herd, attending themselves whenever they want. I think we average about 3 milkings a day here. So they're flying a cow, again, a little bit easier trained, but we haven't really had any cows yet. You know, we're all still first-time calvers. So
so you've yet to calve in your ones that you trained a year ago.
Yeah, we actually, the first one calved there last night. So she was a breeze to put into the robot.
So I suppose the background you would have came from, you weren't obviously dairying beforehand. So how do you find the cows now to work with compared to what you were working with before? Yeah,
so like we had sucklers and sheep before this, so these cows, working with them, it is very much a breeze compared to it. They're very, very quiet animals, as you can see. But in regards to like if you had to go get one to put it in to be milked or anything, like the way the shed is laid out and everything, it's so like one person on their own can go get the cow, no bother at all. You know, that gate opens there, blocks them there, like drop a gate there, and one person can bring a cow in on their own, no bother. Like there's no need for 2 people up here the majority of the time. Like anybody will tip along here on their own now.
So yeah, you have the separation room behind the robot, so you can put a cow in there. So when do you actually use the separation?
Yeah, so in regards to separation, so we have the cubicle separation area and then we have the straw bedded area as well, and you can separate either way around them. So this side of things here, so a fresh calver, we tend to draft them out there. We draft them out for a week. They don't normally need the week. That's just to get them used to coming into the robot themselves, and then by that stage they're normally trained enough and they're okay to come out to the main herd. In regards for AI, they're drafted. And then the straw bedded area, we have calving camera in that. So anything that's due to calve, so once it's in like a week to 2 weeks of calving, they come out underneath the camera. But yeah, we have headlock and barriers in both segregation areas. So if any for AI or any sort of like handling, if you had one with mastitis or anything where it needed tubes, it goes out there to them.
So yeah, you'd use it then if there's a sick cow or mastitis cow, you'd have her drafted in the pen waiting for you then.
Or in the event, we did have a lame one just into the cubicles there, less journey walking to the robot for them.
And Derek was saying as well that there's also foot bathing on a weekly basis, so that's down that direction then.
Yeah,
there's 2 directions on the robot. Yeah.
We have 2 foot baths going in either direction. So we use the one going around this way to the cubicle segregation area the most. So that means we just open the gate on the segregation area on the days that we're foot bathing. So they're foot bathed just once. After milking, they go around that way, and then they can come back out to the main herd.
I'm Simon Moore. I am the Senior Yard Planner with Lely Center Mullingar. I have been working with Lely since 2001. Started off as an engineer, and so next year I'll be 20 years working with robots and the dairy industry. My main role is to come on farm and primarily listen to the farmer to see what he wants to achieve this year, but also 5 years, 10 years down the line. So we're looking at the bigger plan, not just day one and just where to site a robot. So we're looking at the full plan, and that's very varied. So we're heading towards 400 robots in the centre area. So every yard is very different. Every piece of land is very different. What the farmer is looking to achieve. We all want to produce milk, but it could be slightly different in every yard. It's lovely to get an opportunity to come into a greenfield site, but we also would quite regularly be retrofitting into existing buildings and seeing where the plan goes from there, or what other housing is going to be needed. So it's not just around the robot, but it's to make the full system work. It needs to be planned out properly. We like to make the mistakes on paper rather than on the ground. So the planning role is the primary start, but then it leads on to full project management. So we have a team of project managers take on from where I leave off, right through to the farm management support. When I arrive on farm, I am looking at the farmers' expectations, not just this year, but the 5-year plan. But I'm looking at this primarily. I'm looking at a cow flow plan. I'm looking at all the operations that happen through that year, not just day one when we're training, but I'm looking at it for a full year. I'm looking at it through a farmer's eyes. I'm looking at what I would like to do if I was in this yard. So that starts off right from, if you're bringing in heifers or cows to calve, where have we got a place to calve them? That whenever one man comes in, there's a cow calved, can we put that cow straight into the robot, milk her easily? We're really focusing on cow flow, separation and handling. We have a fantastic automatic drafting system incorporated into the robot. We can root cows once a day for a foot bath, and we can root cows on heat. There's loads of options there, and so the plan needs to be right to make that work. I've been brought up on a dairy farm. My father and brother have 2 robots, about to put a 3rd robot in. I also have myself and my wife farming at home, 1 robot, put in the 2nd robot at the moment. So I'm used to working with robots every day. One of the big challenges, if we can have clean floors, we'll have cleaner beds, we'll have less problems with lameness, less problems with mastitis, and less work for the farmer to do. So the collector in this situation was a big part of the plan. We're trying to focus on agitation points outside, both to meet grants, but also for health and safety. We're trying to make it a better yard, but it's also a better yard to spread slurry out of. It's easy to access the slurry. It's also easy to keep cows away from this end of the shed if you're agitating. You can close the cows down the other end of the shed, because these cows are indoor all the time. You have to think of all these things. So it's not, I'm looking at the day we calve the cow, the day we spread slurry, the day we have a herd test. It's all these items that come in. So I'm trying to think through, as a meat farmer, I'm trying to think through every day that something's going to happen on this farm, and trying to maximise a plan that will meet those requirements. We have a Discovery collector here, which is a robotic scraper that has a vacuum system in it, so it can suck up 300 litres of slurry. It also has water on board, so it sprays water before the scraper, so it really loosens up the slurry, sucks it up, carries it to the tank, then empties as it's driving over the tank, and then has water spraying out behind as well, so it leaves a very, very clean floor, but also that helps that it's not going to be a slippy floor as well. So we're trying to make this a nice wide passages, clean passages, good grip on the floor, because there's no smeared dry slurry on it.
I like the idea of the collector sucking the slurry, that it's not pushing a wave of slurry down the passageway of the shed that the cow has to walk through to step across, like as in the manual scrapers. Basically, cleanness of the bed and cleanness of the cow, because we are indoor, cleanliness is a big issue.
I remember one of the conversations we had, and we were talking about the double tank or 2 single tanks, and it was one of my sways was to try and save a bit of money on the concrete work and make a double tank, and add that extra money to a standard Discovery to make it a collector. But it was going to be the better job for the long term. So phase 1 we have for 1 robot, tank storage for 1 robot, and the next phase will be to extend the shed with a new tank at the end. It's not a complete restructuring of the scraping system. The scraper can be reprogrammed to scrape the passageways of the shed for 120, 130 cows, with no obstructions, nothing to damage feet. As Derek has already said, no waves of slurry coming towards them, no slurry to step through. So it is a clean environment. It's a clean environment for the cow and for man. One other huge advantage with a collector is that it can be programmed to vacuum up the solid area of an extension in a retrofit without having to put down internal tanks or flow channels. So you're minimising the cost, the build cost. The other thing we have on a collector, like the running cost, the electricity cost in comparison to an automatic scraper, the ESB cost for 1 month on an automatic scraper is equivalent to a year's cost of ESB on the collector. On this yard, we were trying, you know, when I came to the yard, I suppose there was a cost on the shed, there was an idea on the shed, the size of the shed, overhang size, so we were trying to keep to a budget. And the budget has worked well, like it has worked well with the shed. So we're trying to maximise space as much as possible, and we have, I feel in this, we've met those requirements. We have a dairy, we have the office upstairs to maximise space. We have the 2 separation options, we have room for the second robot, all ready to go. So the next step on would be cubicles and another tank. So it's an easy extension. When we got the plan together, the next step was the project coordinator. And I suppose, although I do the plan and I had done project coordination, we feel that it's right to move on to someone who's dedicated project coordinator, who's there to answer the phone all the time, meet a builder, meet the electrician, the plumber, and coordinate, bring all those, because although the robot is a big part of the spend, it's probably only half of the total cost, because with the shed, dairy, milk tank, the electrical side of it, there's a lot of other items that need to be all pulled together. And I suppose Seamus was brought into that to help Derek, because you know, he pulls all that together. Even though the robot is his role, we're trying to keep the timelines, the budget, keep that spend there. So how many times would he roughly have been, Derek?
Oh gosh, I'd 7 or 8, maybe 10 times. It was a good few times he was here, and I would have been on the phone to him as well a couple of times a week. As coordinators, we come to we'd say a spot, we'd say, oh, what happens here? You'd ring Seamus and he'd either, you know, send you a WhatsApp picture of what something should look like if he wasn't able to explain it to me, like, you know. So, but I'd say anywhere 8-10 times, I'd say. He was here a good bit now. Yeah.
So, and Seamus brings that right through to installation, commissioning.
Well, it's like, even as regards even our electrician, just Seamus telling him where he wants stuff put, so that when the fitters come, or that everything stuff doesn't have to be moved. Just to, as you say, pull the whole thing together and make it all work. Because everyone has a different role. Like, you know, the lad putting up the shed has to know not to have a girder in the way of the robot, so Seamus had to make sure the plan, you know what I mean, this is all going to work if something had to be moved. So from the very beginning to the very end, Seamus would have had a role here.
Okay, so I'm here with Emmett Duffy, who's a ruminant nutritionist and who's working with Derek.
And I suppose on a daily or weekly basis, my job would be to monitor the diets of the cows. So as you can see, they're on a TMR here. Typical winter diet, but unusually this is a 12-month scenario on this farm. So where we feed high quality silage, a little bit of straw, just for some digestible fibre, and a blend of a very finely ground feed so that birds don't bother picking through the silage. So you can see there's no birds really whatsoever going through or rummaging through silage looking for cereal grains and things like that.
And what do you find with the TMR system, I suppose, that works well with robots?
It allows, from a nutritional point of view, it allows us to have the correct balance in a diet. So a diet is made up mainly of 3 different things. So you mainly have your dry matter, your protein, your energy, and your fibres. So if you have one of those out of sync or out of kilter with what should be in the cow's diet, it can lead to various different problems. So if we have a diet that's not formulated correctly and there's not enough fibre, then we're going to suffer from a butterfat issue. However, The one beauty that we find with a robot is we have a rumination measurement that allows us at least to monitor if there is enough fibre in the diet to keep the rumination times correct. So that allows us then to monitor our energy levels, so we can increase or decrease our starch levels in our diet depending on our rumination times, because we know we won't run into the risk of acidosis in those scenarios.
And I suppose obviously the robot is giving back a lot of information and on the computer side of things. So are you looking at those reports with Derek to see?
Yeah, it's certainly when you do a farm call, the first thing you'll obviously look at yield to make sure cows are actually milking well. You'd also be very you'd be very conscious of rumination time as probably the second most important KPI available to us, because if we see an issue there, if we see the rumination times has gone down too low, we'll know straight away, right, if it's only happened in the last few days, we have a week or so to get this right before it starts actually affecting production and whether that's through milk protein, milk volume or butterfat consistency. So based on that, we do keep a very close eye on that. Winter and summer, whether it's a grass-based system or an indoor system like this, it's actually a very, very crucial measurement that we need to keep a very close eye on. So if we see it gets very high, and that's not a bad thing, we just make sure we've enough energy in the diet based on that. We want to see cows ruminating as much as possible, and let the cow's own rumen do as much buffering as possible through the action of chewing her cud. So when we see she's maybe 20 minutes, 25, 30 minutes above what the target would be, that's okay. We're happy to see that, because that means we're not running any risk of causing any long-term damage to the internal workings of the rumen.
And I suppose Derek is running a bit of a different system that is indoors and it's TMR. What kind of people or what kind of farmers are you dealing with that are running that kind of system as well?
It's an unusual system for the south of Ireland, but it's the typical system almost everywhere else. And the one thing that it has allowed a lot of farmers to do, it has meant that farmers don't need to start at large scale to actually have a viable business. And that was one unusual scenario about this farm, where cows' output is so high, even though they eat quite a large quantity of concentrate, the margin over all that is actually pretty decent, and it has meant that small herds actually are quite viable businesses. There's a long-term aspect to that for any farm, that they don't have to invest huge scales of money to get into dairying, and they don't have to have huge blocks of ground available, grazing ground available to them right around the parlour. That this now allows for silage to be drawn quite a distance into a system for ground that otherwise would not be usable for a dairy system. So from the point of view, it does allow maybe more new entrants who are disillusioned with beef at this stage and not really seeing where the benefits are going to come from, or people whose land is very, very difficult and hard farms, that this, if so long as they can make forage and make good quality forage on the farm, this now actually becomes quite a viable option, running a 50-60 cow herd.
Yeah, and I suppose for people working off farm then as well.
Yeah, there's actually for the part-time farmer, this size of operation is actually perfectly manageable. So it brings in a farmer who might look at a farm and might have a farm and not really sure what they're going to do with it, don't particularly want to have to use their hard-earned money to try and keep the farm in business, and all of a sudden this becomes an option where it's a couple of hours a day labour on this type of system, because you're not moving fences for a grazing system, things like that. It's 20 minutes saved here, it's half an hour saved there. And all in all, a system like this can, if efficiently and when things are going fairly well, can be run with a couple of hours labour every day. As the herd mainly here is heifers, we would hope next year that we would certainly like to see a target of 750 kilos of solids as an average, and possibly beyond that. The cows here have a capability of doing up to 15,000 litres in 3 or 5 days. So it's quite unusual. It's a completely different type of cow than would be on a grass-based system. We're hoping that we can hit somewhere in the region of around 650 kilos this year as a heifers, but within that we do know there's some heifers going to hit 1,000 kilos as well. If cows can hit the kind of production figures we hope, that they should be able to produce at least that 650 kilos this year. It will probably take, in the region, we would expect a 10,000 litre cow, which again would be 2.5 times what the average Irish cow would be. We would expect she will probably eat somewhere in the region of 2.5 to 3 tonne of concentrate. Probably closer to 2.5 overall, as silage quality is quite high on this farm, so there's quite a lot of production coming from the forage itself.
Do you think this indoor TMR system suits the robot better than just a traditional milking parlour?
Yes is the long and the short answer to it. The reason the system suits is because the type of cow here really does lend herself to being milked at least 3 times a day. Now, under a parlour scenario, there is a very, very select few in the country doing that because it's a huge labour requirement. And the type of cow here will even benefit from being milked 4 times a day, because there's cows within this herd capable of doing, as heifers, well capable of doing 60 litres of milk, as mature cows next year capable of doing over 70 litres of milk. So the pressure that would put on the ligaments within the udder means that really that cow is only suitable for a robotic system. But the advantage that cow has is that you don't need a big herd to get maximum output from a robot.
How does the robot farms help you on your day-to-day job?
Generally, since my first introduction to robots back about 7 years ago, the one thing one thing I instantly seen with them was we could actually manage cows individually on a herd. So from a concentrate point of view, it meant where we have in a parlour scenario where we have a typical farm will feed 3 kilos or 2 kilos or 5 kilos a day to every cow. Some of those cows deserve it and deserve maybe quite a bit more, but other cows in there don't deserve it, but they're still getting it. So it has meant that the efficiency of feed has gone way up on a farm. So there's no longer feed wasted going into a cow that doesn't deserve it. And the cow that does deserve it, at least now, actually can be fed individually in the system. And the fact that she has, we would see at this farm where, as I said, cows can be milked 3-4 times a day. It's quite easy to feed that cow, if she deserves it, a large quantity of concentrate.
So I'm Tom Flanagan from Park Veterinary Centre, and we're delighted to be working with Derek O'Halloran here since he started milking in early 2020.
So I suppose, I know you'll probably be dealing with more spring calving systems, but still, when a cow calves down, and what kind of information are you looking for if you get called out?
I suppose for the first 60 to 100 days, we're looking mainly at metabolic issues. So we're looking straight away at their feed intake, making sure that there's not too much rest feed left, and then looking at their own individual performances, like the fat protein ratio is a great indicator of where they are metabolically, how they're pushing on into their lactation.
Okay, so say
whether they're in ketosis or not.
Okay,
yeah.
So you're looking at ketosis then.
Yeah.
Okay, and then throughout the year, then I suppose more so for mastitis, then you get.
Yeah, mastitis is like you have. Like on conventional farms, even a milk according conventional farms, you're dealing with maybe at best 10 points throughout the year where somatic cell count is measured on an individual cow basis, where here, even on smart sampling, it's measured every 3rd day.
Yeah.
So you have great data there to build up a profile of what's going on any farm. And that's a help when it comes to sampling too, because you know exactly which cows to sample if there is an issue. There rarely is, but if there is an issue, it's very accessible to the cows you need to sample. Yeah. Especially for selective dry cow therapy, you have the cows data there for the whole of the year.
Yeah. So any of those farms that you were dealing with, like, have you been looking at the graph? So you can pull up a graph for the year.
Yes, you can pull up a somatic cell count graph for the whole year. You can see your spikes throughout the year if there are any, and it's very easy to pick a point on your graph. Do we go with dry cow, with antibiotics above or below a certain line? It's very, very easy to do. It's very useful as well for fertility as well. 100 days post calving, we can pull up which cow hasn't cycled yet. We can get in there, scanners, see what issues are there, and get cows moving quicker. If we can get every cow back in calf by 100 days, Derek's happy, we're happy. Why wouldn't we use it? It's going to drive our business forward, and it's going to drive Derek's business forward.
Yeah, you said there, Tom, that you think the robot might do you a bit of work. So what did you actually mean by that?
So particularly with mastitis cases, the robot will detect mastitis cases before they become clinical cases. So when they're still at the subclinical stage, their somatic cell count will start to rise. It'll rise in conductivity. So it gives the farmer a chance to get in there with other creams and non-withdrawal anti-inflammatories before antibiotics are used at all, reducing his antibiotic usage and increasing the amount of milk he's supplying to the creamery as well.
So if we were to compare, I suppose, a robot farm with a conventional farm, how many days quicker would a robot farm pick up mastitis than a conventional?
I would say at least 2 to 3 days on average earlier. It's tracking their rise in somatic cell count and conductivity before it's a clinical issue at all. It'll be clinical before it's detected in a conventional parlour.
So from what you're seeing, more farmers with a robot are getting subclinical mastitis and getting it before it actually
They're dealing with it themselves, yeah, before it gets to the clinical stage, before yield has decreased, before she's gone off her feed, before she spiked the temperature, before all of these things have happened.
What do you think the main advantages are for a client to have a robotic system?
Well, early detection of any problems. You can get in there, you can be more proactive managing any issues on the farm, whether it be dietary, clinical or mastitis infections, fertility issues, lameness even, like your motility or your activity around the farm is spotted by the collar. Any cow that's anyway off form, her rumination is the first thing that'll drop. If there's respiratory issues on a farm, you'll see clusters of high temperatures there at an early stage before you're seeing coughing, and you can get in there at that point and deal with it before it becomes an issue. You can get in there, take samples early when the cows have high temperatures, where you will get better results, and you can implement vaccination programs even before there are disease outbreaks on the farm, huge disease outbreaks on the farm and huge economic losses.
Thanks very much, folks. I'm sure you'll agree, very interesting last 40 minutes. I really want to thank all our contributors. I want to thank our vet, Tom Flanagan, gave some great insight from his viewpoint. I want to thank Simon Moore for giving us a bit of a history of how we ended up with a design like this. So it's working really well, it's not a coincidence, a lot of thoughts gone into it. I want to thank Emmett Duffy, who's a nutritionist on the farm, made some very interesting points, and it's great to see him as part of the team. And I want to thank Jordan Malloy and the rest of the Lely team for any contributions they've made. But mostly I want to thank Derek and the O'Halloran family. As you can see, this is a real family affair. They're busy people. They have obviously their egg business as well, but the whole family is involved, working really well, getting tremendous results, and I've no doubt it's going to be even more successful as time goes on. We will admit that this indoor system isn't very common here in the Republic of Ireland, but we are finding more and more clients are interested. That's the way they want to go. They may have a fragmented farm, they may have smaller land blocks, they may find this system is more labour efficient, and it might be part of a part-time enterprise. So there is huge experience within the Lely business of this system, and a lot of experience within our own business in the last couple of years. So if it is something that interests you and you'd like to find out more, please don't hesitate to get in contact. So thank you very much for everyone looking in, and looking forward now to hear all the questions that are coming our way. Hello there. Niall McGorn back here again. Just want to see if we've got everybody tuned in. We're going to have a good few on the panel. We're going to have Jordan and Carlo. Hello, Jordan.
Hello.
Hello, Jordan. Come in, Carlo. Carlo is looking good. How is all in Ramos? Tom Flanagan?
All good here now.
Very good, very good. Glad to have you there. I recognise these two guys. Oscar-winning performance, I must say, from the O'Halloran family, Rebecca and Derek. Simon, got the beard trimmed. Glad to see the efforts put in. Well done. A little bit of a trim, yeah. Hello. Well done, well done. And Emmett is going to show himself at some point and unmute himself. So, guys, I'm going to head straight into this. We got over 20 questions, so I'm going to crack on. Well done. Very interesting presentations. We've had a huge attendance, and everyone seems to be hanging on for questions and answers, so I get straight into it. Derek, a question for you. How long was Derek thinking about getting into milk before he decided to proceed?
Well, I suppose it was in our heads a couple of years, but about a year, we seriously looked at it about a year before we decided.
Okay. Another question for Derek. Did he consider or price up a parlour system?
No, in that a parlour system wouldn't work for us, in that I couldn't commit myself to being in a parlour at a certain time, morning and evening, because I could be in a poultry shed, or I wouldn't have the time, apart from the other reasons as well. But that would be the initial reason for not looking into it.
Derek did say to me at one point that all the progressive farmers are putting in robots, so that was another reason, I'm sure. Both those questions were from Vincent. A question from Rory for Derek again. How does Derek manage the breeding of the herd? I'm assuming that's related to the heat detection collars.
Yes, the heat. We go solely by the robot. When it says that I have to serve the heifer or the cow or whatever I'm serving, I go by that. I have quite a good holding rate at the AI that we're using, and we do use sex semen as well. So it's the robot collars are working very well in that respect.
Okay, thanks for that, Derek. A question from Seamus, and I might put this to Jordan first, and then Emmett, you can jump in. What way does feed to yield work, and why use it instead of blanket feeding?
So the simple explanation, I suppose, is for the first 50, 60 days of lactation, it's not feed to yield, it's a blanket kind of feeding to get them up and over peak. And then feed to yield kicks in. So it'll feed the lower yielders, whatever bracket is set by the feed rep or the nutritionist, it will set the lower yielders at a lower level of meal and the higher yielders at a higher level of meal. So therefore rewarding the higher yielders for the harder work. So that's the basics.
What's your experience, Emmett, of feed to yield?
Yeah, the big advantage, as Jordan was saying there with it, is that you can target the feed at individual cows depending on the requirements. And of course, the high yielding cow is always under far more pressure because she's generally eating the same amount of roughage as a low yielding cow. So all extra milk either comes from her back or out of the concentrate part of her diet. So by matching, like for high yielding cows, doing 40, 50, even 60 litres of milk, their energy requirements are so much greater than a typical grass cow, maybe peaking at 22, 23 litres. So there's no point in feeding all the cows that heavy. You individually feed them in that case. It's far more efficient from a cost point of view.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that. A question, Derek, from Brendan. Have you considered zero grazing?
Yes, and we gave it a try for a few months during the summer, but with zero grazing, you have to still feed silage and blend at night time with the diet feeder. And again, purely time-wise, it was easier to put extra silage in the diet feeder and only feed them once rather than have to feed them twice. So that was the reason that we don't zero graze at the moment, which is purely time.
Okay, thanks for that. A question from Paul, and the question is, can you get the Lely yard design plan without having to buy a robot? So I can answer that, Paul. I suppose the likes of Simon and our William and our project management team, they may be on farm as part of the client doing their homework and maybe putting together the business plan. But if we start getting into some serious detail, obviously we'd have to kind of come to some arrangement. Everyone we meet doesn't decide to proceed, and we understand some people have a bit of work to do before they decide whether it's for them. So there's no issue in getting an initial call from the likes of Simon, but if we're getting into doing some real detail and real work, well, we'll obviously have to talk about that before it happens. There's another question from Alan. and I'm going to keep moving through these fairly quickly because we have a lot of them. Do Lely Mullingar have a list of recommended suppliers, builders, tradespeople? We try to deal with the people that the client wants to deal with, if there's people of experience with, but if they don't have builders or electricians or plumbers or tradespeople that have a preference for, yes, we can give them a list of people we've had good experience with in the past. We're not in bed with anyone, but we're happy to recommend guys who we know do a good job. A question, Tom, for you, and it's from Paul. Does Tom the vet find it harder or easier to work with robot herds?
Well, it's easier really because you have more data on at a cow level, as Emmett was saying there earlier. So yeah, it's easier than a conventional herd. You've data at your disposal every day, be it the vet or the farmer.
So, which probably allows you to give better advice then, because you know more what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Another question for you from Tony, Tom. Is there any system to allow me check the somatic cell count every day in my milking parlour, similar to what the robot does?
Not that I'm aware of. None of my clients have one anyway. No, maybe that's a trick question, but not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I'm not that I'm aware of, but the well could be. Not something I've come across myself. What's the question from Daniel? What's the split between indoor and grazing farms in Ireland? Daniel, in the north of Ireland, predominantly indoor systems, similar to what Derek and Rebecca is doing. In the south, it's predominantly spring calf and grass based, but we probably, I know 15-20% of our clients are more of a higher input system. So it's actually getting more popular, believe it or not. A lot of people looking at doing something similar to what Derek and Rebecca are doing. So that is interesting. A question from Robert, Derek, for you. If you were a full-time dairy farmer, how many cows do you think you could handle on your system?
Well, in a family operation, like you could, like extra robots isn't, the cows are all in the shed. It's not that much extra work. That's as many as you want to have, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
As long as a piece of string.
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer. What's your experience, Simon? You'd have 20 years in the business. What have you seen on your travels?
I suppose I'd probably see that we see whether it's a grazing system or whether it's an indoor system, like whenever Derek goes out to feed, if he's a bigger diet feeder and he mixes, is it going to take much longer to feed out? If he had 2, 3, 4 robots, probably not much difference. Bit longer filling the feeder, scraping, and if you have an easy way to bed, or there's different small things that can be used to help bed. But changing filters, if you have multiple robots, you might have a twin filter that would do the work for you. So having time, the breeding time, feet, just cow management. It's a time spent at that, but if the system's set up right, there shouldn't be a huge amount of extra work. The same on a grazing system. We find that a single robot user is changing the fence 3 times a day. 4 robots, 6 robot farmer is changing the fence 3 times a day. It's just bigger paddocks and extra filters washed around the robots. It's, again, cow management time, calving, breeding. That's the main difference.
I know our Dutch colleagues used to have a target of 1 million litres a labour unit.
Yeah.
And now I believe with automated feeding and scraping and all the learning that they're up to 2 million litres a labour unit. I'm sure there's a few guys doing it, but it wouldn't be the norm. Yep. Okay, moving on. A question, Emmett, for you, I'm guessing, is from Tony. Could you do an indoor system without a mixer wagon?
Yeah, you can actually. In some cases, some of the high output systems are also working without mixer wagons. It makes it easier from a forage point of view that you're not limited to just grass silage. So you can have, in scenarios where maize silage or whole crop or alkylage or things like that is available, that it gives you a lot more flexibility. But for a high yielding cow with no diet feeder, you would definitely be looking at an outer parlour feeder scenario as well. If it's a typical grass-based cow, the robot is sufficient to feed that cow in up to 20, 26, 27 litres. There isn't really much hassle actually putting all her feed through the robot rather than a feeder wagon.
Okay. I'm just trying to read questions and listening at the same time. A question from Donald for you, Derek and Rebecca. 36 litre peak was mentioned. It seems very high for heifers. Have you had much difficulty getting cows back in calf?
No, we wouldn't be typical either, in that the very high yielders, we're not in a hurry to put them back into calf. So we have cows here, or heifers here at the moment, making nearly 400 days that might only have a straw in them 100 days. So the longest heifer that milked here was actually making 630 days. She was making before I got her, and we milked her on, and she was dried at the 630 days. We had to dry her from 30 litres down to nothing. So they will keep milking if you keep feeding them.
Okay. A question from Eamon, Derek, for you again. Where did you source your cows?
We sourced all our cows in the south of Ireland. Most came from two different dairy farmers that I met along the way. About 40 off one man and nearly 15 or 16 off another man initially, and we went back to them and bought younger heifers that are actually calving now, to bridge the gap between having our own young stock.
Okay. Another question, Derek, from Mark. How many breakdowns has Derek had over the last 12 months?
The first couple of weeks, there would have been a couple of little things. The boys got me going over the phone within half an hour. Mainly stuff that was probably my own fault. But there was no big breakdowns, like we were never stopped for any more than an hour.
Okay, good. Another question from Dara. How long did it take you to get used to the computer?
Well, we say within for the first 3 days of milking cows, there was somebody from Lely here for the morning and evening for the first 3 days to get the cows milked and show me what to do and show me how to train cows. So you learn a little bit every day. So within the week, I had all the basic stuff that we needed to use. I'm still learning more technical stuff that can help me. We're sort of learning all the time as such. There's always something that Jordan can show me that I don't already know, and so like we're still learning, like, and we will be for a while, I'd say.
It's not hard to use.
It's not hard to use. Like, the basic system is simple to use. You're
very lucky in that you've got a very good lady beside you to keep you on the straight and narrow as well.
Absolutely.
There's many you get when you're a few FaceTimes when I was up in college too.
Hey, Rebecca, we know you're really running the show. We know that. A question, Simon, for you.
You don't need me here at all.
No.
A question for Simon. Why was an external feed barrier chosen instead of an internal feed passageway?
Well, I think it's partly a more efficient shed. There's good. You're working with all the cows inside the shed. You're not driving through the middle. If there were two robots, you end up driving in the middle of the robots for the separation. It's really the way the two robots, the head are lined up, so that you'll end up for the separation. You have two separation shops to the straw and to the cubicle separation. So if you go with an internal feed space, it's a wider shed. It's not going to be as efficient to use for feeding. There's feed space right around the three sides, the end as well. So while Derek was zero grazing, he had huge feed space. So that's the main reason.
Okay, very good. Just reading questions here. A question, Rebecca, I know you touched on it. How many hours an average day, this is from Brendan, do you need to put in on the farm, say if you also had a part-time job? That's
Yeah, for me myself, I suppose I'm full time at the minute. In a college, I'm doing an internship at the moment. So, look, I spend about, I suppose, an hour in the actual, even less than an hour in the actual here in the dairy in the morning. The rest of my time is spent feeding calves in the morning. In the evening, then probably a little bit longer in the evening. There's more to do. We're feeding cows and stuff in the evening. So an hour and a half, 2 hours would probably be the max for basic stuff. That if you were to AI a cow or anything, you'd add a little bit of time into that.
Add an hour into that then for filling the wagon and feeding out.
Yeah.
okay. Okay. Very good question from Donica. And anyone can chip in here, but I'll start with Derek and Rebecca. What are things that you would change or don't like about the setup? And if you had your time back, what would you change about the building or Lely? So I suppose if you were to do it again, what would you do different?
I have to say there's nothing major that I do different. I'm trying to think of something. I everything works very well. I don't think there's anything in particular that I need to change or that I would like to change.
There's nothing that I see or hear every single day and go, I wish I'd done that differently, you know. There's nothing that annoys you every day. Everything is very straightforward.
Okay, well that's good. Simon, you're the man that designed the setup. Is there anything you'd look back and do any differently than what you're doing now, or what was done?
I think to see what was achieved in that shed at the butt, I think it was it's an excellent shed. Great cow comfort. When you see the cows all lying down, they're either eating or they're lying down, like it's the great comfort. Cows are very happy. And there's a few things that Derek, you know, in time, like he's already put a wall outside to try and cut down some of the wind through. He has the gale breakers up above the barriers. So there's a few things that he has tackled already, and he can see where he's going to put his pit along that side with the prevailing wind coming from. So there's a few things that's going to be in the long-term plan. But apart from that, it's a very good plan.
There's another question, Simon, for you. What about ventilation fans or artificial ventilation for warm weather?
I suppose we don't see a big need for them. Probably there's going to be extremes every couple of years where we're going to have. I've seen it already in a couple of days in the last 7-8 years. I can remember where you would have needed ventilation fans, but not a huge amount. In these open-sided sheds, that's where there are issues where we have, if we have extreme weather coming from the southwest, wherever, and it's coming blowing through the shed. If you can block that off or do, but then there's only the number of days when you need that. Whereas in the summertime, then you want the air going through the shed. So it's we're not seeing the extremes that you would see maybe in some other parts, like maybe in the south of England, where you would see more extreme temperatures and longer extreme temperatures. We're not seeing that.
Okay, very good. While I have you there, Simon, is there a set of greenfield plans for a new robot shed, or is each shed custom designed?
There's probably a template that we'd use, idea that we'd use to get that agitation point on the out of the shed for a grant and for health and safety. Most of the walkways that reaches out to the outside of the gutter line, the agitation points are outside. So then that works well for the scraper, but it also works well for expansion. So the type of plan that we have here is probably the template that we use quite a lot, or a 3-row double cubicle. But there's always a slight twist on every job, depending on what other housing there is nearby, calving, dry cows. Every job is still tailored to a specific customer. There's rarely when we hand out the plant job, the dairy could be in a slight side, you're pushing from a different side, where well they're coming from. There's lots of.
Yeah, no, that's fine. No, I get that, Simon. You're just breaking up a bit there. Another question, Derek and Rebecca. I am a new entrant like yourself. Just wondering if you had any problems with TB after buying in new stock from different farms, as I'm having major problems with it.
No, we had no big issue with TB. We had a slight problem about 2.5 months ago. We had a little bit of environmental mastitis. With discussing it with the vets, we actually have started to vaccinate for that particular strain of mastitis.
Okay. There's a question for Tom. Tom, what are the biggest health considerations you come across on an indoor system? What are the biggest challenges, I guess, when you're dealing with Derek's type of system?
I'd say infectious lameness and then contagious mastitis.
Okay.
And depending on ventilation, then maybe respiratory issues as well. So they'd be the three biggest.
Would you put preventative plans in place, or just deal with issues as they arise? What would your practice recommend?
Well, sure, you always try to get ahead of problems. Derek has a great setup there. He's the cleaning system there, or the should rule out most infectious causes of lameness. I think Peter deals more with Derek, but they were Derek was very proactive there when he had strep uberis issue, so he's vaccinating for strep uberis now. That's an infectious cause of mastitis, which is quite contagious and is a big factor in indoor systems. There's a new vaccine available for that there now, so that's a great addition to the herd. And yeah, I'd say they'd be the main ones anyway. Yeah, and then respiratory issues can be dealt with at an early stage. If you're getting spikes in temperatures, go in there, take swabs, and just implement vaccination programs. We're always trying to be proactive rather than reactive.
Yeah. No, well done. Just going through the list here, there's a lot of questions that have been asked before, zero graze and labour. I'm just going to take one last one. Can I get a list of farms worth visiting? You most certainly can. Obviously, we would be following all the COVID precautions and recommendations, but what we would have done with Derek is, once we had conversations, we kind of earmarked farms we felt he'd learn from, and he went up and had a look himself with his own family and liked what he's seen. And then with discussions with Simon, discussions with our own people, came with a plan, and thankfully it's working well. An awful lot of comments. Lovely to see this family doing so well, hard workers, a whole lot of stuff like that. So a lot of love out there, guys, for what you're doing, is the way that the kids would say it to me. So look, we're going to leave it at that. I really appreciate the O'Halloran family. It's not easy to open up your farm and put yourself under the microscope, and really appreciate your honesty. And I know it cost me a lifetime supply of Lely overalls, but look, we'll have to take that on the chin. But really appreciate it, guys, and best of luck in the future. Want to thank Tom Flanagan and his practice, doing fantastic work, not just on the O'Halloran farm, but on many farms in his area. So great reputation, so very good outfit. Emmett, well done, Emmett. Emmett's dealing with a lot of the top herds in the Midlands, so really appreciate him coming on board and contributing. And Simon Moore has 20 years experience, and this is just one of many farms that Simon has dealt with last year and go back a long number of years, and thank God, all working really well. So appreciate your input, Simon. Thanks very much, Jordan. Didn't have a lot of questions for you this time, but you've had a lot in the last few, so appreciate your time. So thanks very much. Hope everyone got a lot from the last hour or so, and look forward to catching up in the new year, and happy Christmas to everyone. Thank you.